Copper, a critical mineral, has now reached a new all-time high. It's been gaining momentum all throughout the year after having lost some steam following late February. It's now regained its losses. This is an interesting story because it's diverged from gold. I'll show you the chart on the screen shortly. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show to talk about copper and the future of mining, and in particular, Algo Grande Copper. So Enrico Gay, CEO and Director, and Joao Rocha, VP of Exploration, join us once more. Welcome back to the show, Enrico and Joao. Good to see you.
Thank you, David. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, David.
Let me start by talking about the copper price. So our friend Tavi Costa posted this on X the other day. Copper versus gold. Gold prices are in yellow. Copper prices are in blue. Like I stated in the introduction, there's been a divergence. And so, you know, it's very interesting because these two metals have been moving together for quite some time. And every time there's a divergence, it's interesting to note. Will gold follow and go up, or will copper come down? We don't know, but divergences, like they call these alligator jaws, usually close at some point. Let's talk about why copper has been gaining momentum, even though gold has been stalling. There's the narrative that AI and the AI revolution demands more raw materials. Perhaps the Strait of Hormuz closure has put some pressure on some commodities. Was there any other reason that's on your radar?
I think, you know, as Joao was pointing out just earlier today, there is some very large copper mines that are not kicking into production the way that they should have. So there's a significant slowdown in supply. I think also Chile has posted one of their lowest productions recently.
Yeah.
And you have, you know, demand going up potentially tenfold in the US due to artificial intelligence demands. So there's a real scramble going on. I think copper is undervalued. There's also a ratio to gold that I was looking at, and it seems that actually because gold has moved significantly higher, the ratio copper to gold is actually now larger than it ever was. So it does make sense for copper to be moving up. I'm not an analyst though. You know, I watch the market like everybody else. We can read into the supply and demand dynamics, and we're definitely believers that this is a metal that's in huge demand, and there needs to be more companies looking to make new discoveries, as Algo Grande is, as we're focused on doing. But I know maybe Joao can add a few points on that.
Yeah. And
yeah,
Joao,
of course. So
yeah, go ahead, please.
yeah, of course. So we can look into what has been happening in the big producers like Grasberg had a cut after the accident last year of 35% on the copper output. Kamoa-Kakula around 20% cut on production. So this just shows, you know, how dependent is the market from really, really big operations. And this also comes to the point that me and Enrico, our rhythm when we started the company, that, you know, the copper and the metals should diversify into other type of deposits. Because the problem when you are dealing with such a big deposit like Grasberg is if something goes wrong, it's like the Strait of Hormuz, right? If you have only one artery, if you cut it, that's a problem for the world. So smaller deposits are like our case, but with higher tonnages which are profitable, I think now than never have more potential to go forward, and this type of lack in supply just give power to this type of deposits.
Just to follow up, Joao, can you comment on the supply side of copper? How different is it today to extract, produce copper than maybe 10 to 15 years ago? Maybe just comment on the geology. Yes.
Yeah, in terms of geology, we see this type of big mines like Grasberg being around for 100 years. So the way it's much harder to extract, right? You need to go deeper, you need to go underground, you need to go sometimes more than a kilometer deep. So all of that poses challenges to an operation, and also risks, right? As your mine expands, there are many risks. So for the big operations, it gets harder and harder to produce. And for something like us from surface, it's as easy as it was when they started, right? So that's the main challenge.
Enrico, with copper at all-time highs, comment on financing, please, and whether or not corporate strategy and fundraising have changed for you.
So we've been doing a lot of talking to investors, both high net worth, family offices, institutions, and there's definitely a big appetite for companies that are exploring for copper. I think now more than ever, there is an abundance of capital that's flowing into the space. And, thankfully, we are greeted in those rooms as a company that's worthy of the capital. So I would say it's changed very positively. I even think in the last month and a half, we've really seen a big shift. Now that copper is above $6 per pound.
This is a new article that came out from the CBC yesterday. Trump issues proclamation to lower some steel, aluminum, and copper tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday signed a proclamation to amend his Section 232 national security tariffs on some aluminum, steel, and copper imports. Effective June 8th, tariffs on some steel and aluminum derivatives, including certain types of agricultural machinery, will be lowered from 25% to 15%. So what happens to demand once we have lower tariffs on copper?
I mean, your guess is just as good as mine. I think that reading too much into the tariff is maybe a mistake. I think the president has his own agenda when it comes to all these commodities. So I'm not sure.
Well, let's put it this way: do tariffs impact operations for junior miners and explorers? Do you follow, as part of your corporate strategy as CEO, do you look at tariffs and change strategy in any meaningful way? Or does it not impact you at this stage yet?
I believe the tariffs are on final copper, like the final product, like the final copper product.
Yeah.
So they do not impact, for example, if you wanted to import into the US copper concentrate, or it is definitely not something that's going to affect us right now, because we're still, in the exploration stage. So, we're looking at it like everybody else, but we're not changing our plans due to these tariffs.
Okay. In this environment, when copper has been soaring and outperforming even some stocks, what is perhaps the reason for investing in a copper company such as yourself versus just buying the underlying metal? I get this a lot from investors. Basically, why take on additional risk when the underlying is good enough? How would you answer that question?
Well, I would say, my personal opinion, which again, I'm not a wealth manager, so please don't take my advice, but is if you feel strongly about the incoming or happening copper bull market, you want to probably play all 3 or 4 of these angles. So you want to have exposure to the commodity. You want to have exposure to the companies that are currently mining and having cash flow and generating and selling their copper. And then you want to have probably a smaller part of your portfolio allocated to exploration companies.
Yeah.
Where you may have, you're taking on obviously much more risk. But if a company such as ourselves is able to come back and delineate a world-class copper deposit, then the potential return could be significant. So you just want to spread your bets. I think that's the key point. Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys agree with me or not, but
well, Joao, let's take a look at this slide, and I'll let you comment on the future of copper. Renewable technology is one source of demand. AI to add 3.4 million tons by 2050, 6 to 7 times additional data center demand, and 4 times more copper in EVs. Can you just put some perspective into this number here for our audience? 3.4 million tons by 2050? What kind of deficit are we talking about
Oh,
if things don't
yeah.
pick
So
up from the supply side?
this is a great slide, and it's a topic that I love, and this is something that me and Enrico have been trying to tell everybody, and people
Hmm.
seem to now understand what the deficit means. And like take for example, just get two examples. The first is when cell phones arrived, it took a long time for everybody to start using a cell phone. But now take for example AI tools that everybody use daily that probably 1 year ago you would not speak about. And then that means that you need a lot of copper, right? These things don't run on fairy tales. They run on copper wires mostly. And if you are getting like 7 billion people using, well, almost everybody using AI machine, that means you're gonna have a huge demand for this type of materials. If you put on top of this what we talked about in the beginning, which is Grasberg cutting 35% production, Kamoa-Kakula cutting 20%, and the increasing costs of production on those type of mines, that tells you that, yeah, 3.5 million tons of copper is a lot of copper when you think about that those deposits are running like 0.2% copper. So to get 3.4 million tons, one can make the calculation on how many tons they need to extract that and how much that will cost. Our view on this is we have higher grade. So to take 3.4 million tons of copper from a deposit like ours, you are much more efficient. So you will move less dirt to take the same amount of copper. And that's why we chose this to be our project in our company. And we decline a lot of projects before getting to this one. Literally, we decline, I can say 100 of projects before getting this one,
Yeah.
because we think that this type of smaller deposits will help mitigate the fact that the big ones are not capable of delivering 3.4 million tons of copper in 20 years, 25 years, which is the time we have. So if you don't plug in deposits which are higher percent and easy to extract, we won't make it. And if we don't make it, well, you will not have the AI running as fast as you have. And one thing that is not accounted there, but something that is everybody should be thinking about is infrastructure. If you think the infrastructure in Europe, if you think the infrastructure in the US, sometimes that infrastructure is older than 100 years old,
Hmm.
and you are not able to charge your car, you're not able to have your houses with the best electricity possible with the current infrastructure. So if you put all together, I think everybody will understand why we need so much copper and why it's so important to mine it now. Also, recycling is not cut it like tomorrow. We recycling is not there yet. I hope that in the future it will be, and I hope that we get. Being a geologist, it's weird, but yeah, I think I would like recycling to be a huge part of this, but it's just not there. So the answer is pretty simple. There is not enough metal. Guys like Robert Friedland have been saying this for a while, and I think now people are starting to understand that there is not enough metal on the market to cover everything.
How is this not a national emergency crisis? Enrico, I
I
don't know if
think
you
it
want to answer
is.
that. Okay, go ahead, Joe. Yes.
Yeah, I think it is in some places, but between being a national emergency for the government and people actually feeling it in everyday life, there is a discrepancy, and I let Enrico talk a bit about that.
Yeah, please do. I mean, we living in an age where every single electronic item, device uses semiconductors, which uses an assortment of metals, including copper. And this will only increase in demand as AI will need new chips and more chips. And you're telling us that basically the new oil cannot be extracted fast enough. What can the industry do to address this problem? What can the governments do to help the industry?
I don't have a lot of faith in the governments, to be honest. I think private sector is always the best solution for fixing, economic supply and demand issues. I'm an optimist. I think we'll be just fine because, of free markets like the ones, that we thankfully have in the Western world, where, you have the incentive from investors, management teams, to advance projects like we're advancing in Sonora, Mexico right now. So, I think yeah, I think we'll figure it out. But I my only the only alarm that I will sound is that you have these massive projects that we're relying on for future supply, but a lot of them are in extremely remote places, and a lot of them are in places with not a lot of access to water. They're very high elevation. So it's really, really key for short and medium term supply that we focus on projects that have high grade copper
Mhm.
closer to surface and not in extremely remote places in the Andes, but for example, this one, 10 hours away from the US border with Arizona. So yeah, that would be my thing. Is just let's focus on the giants, but let's also focus in the short to medium term. Let's bring some high grade, high quality, mid to lower tonnage projects to the market. And we are a one license, a one project company. We don't have a portfolio of five, six different licenses that we're advancing slowly. We're advancing one really, really high quality license aggressively. You'll see a ton of news coming out from us because we're going to be drilling this 8,000 meters. We'll have two drill rigs running.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's exciting times for anybody looking at the copper space. I think, yeah, I
Let's
think it
talk
makes
about
a lot.
Sonora State. You mentioned this several times now. The
Yeah.
project is located in Mexico, specifically Sonora State. Tell us about Sonora and why this jurisdiction is particularly important for copper.
So Sonora is I think I can comfortably say it's the best mining jurisdiction within Mexico. It's the best state to be mining in Mexico. Why? Is you have some of the largest copper mines already there. You have a deep sea water port. So 80% of the copper produced in Mexico is produced in this region and this map that you're seeing in Sonora. And it all makes its way through this port and it all actually goes to Asia. China and Japan are the biggest buyers. So going back to the
That's
question you asked
interesting.
before about, copper tariffs, well, I think the tariffs really are going to be irrelevant because already the
Hmm.
copper is not going to the US. The copper flows to Asia, and then they have smelters there, and they produce the final form of the copper wires that we're accustomed to. Um,
Hmm.
so
That's an important part of the
yeah,
story, by the way, because investors are always looking to shield themselves from tariff affected industries. And you've basically shown that not just this industry, but this particular area is not susceptible to the impacts of tariffs and the pressures on tariffs.
yeah. No, I would if I was a smelter and I was selling like a final copper product back to the US, that would be a challenge. That would be a risk.
Yeah.
But in terms of copper concentrate, no, it will find its way to a smelter, whether, in one way or the other. It would be great for the US to have smelters and infrastructure to be able to
Hmm.
process concentrate. So they, instead of sending it halfway across the world through, we could send it, 10 hours north into the US. But I don't think that infrastructure really exists at scale, which is why the copper concentrate makes its way to Asia. They have the smelters. And I think that's another point people miss is the supply of copper concentrate is not the issue. It's the infrastructure. These Asian countries did the work earlier. They invested billions of dollars building this infrastructure, and now they're way ahead of us. And the chokehold is on the refining side, not the concentrate.
If you take a look at this map here, Algo Grande is situated right around a few established miners already, Pan American Silver, Bolivar. Why is this important?
It's massively important because the Pan American mine, it's called Alamo Dorado. It produced 70 million ounces of silver. It actually, in that map, it looks way further away than it is. It's actually only 4 kilometers away. We can see it.
Hmm.
And we access the project through roads that were built by Pan American Silver. So this is a very active mining region. It's just
Do you have to
it's
pay them a
great.
toll? By the way, is that part
No,
of your operating costs? No?
no,
Okay.
it was a road that was built. It wasn't built by Pan American Silver. It was, I guess,
Hmm.
more correctly built for Pan American Silver by the
Hmm.
government.
Hmm.
So it's a public road.
Hmm.
Uh, and also we're 50 kilometers away from the third largest copper producer in Mexico, Piedras Verdes, which is a very large open pit porphyry style copper deposit. So the mining infrastructure here, it's just as good as it gets. In the words of our senior technical advisor, Peter McGaw, if the infrastructure was any better, you'd have to move it out of the way.
Joao, can you comment on this map as well and comment from a geologist perspective why it's important to be operating on a deposit close to other established deposits?
It has a lot of good things being in a place like this because you are close from big mines, so a lot of geological work has been done to advance these mines, and you can extrapolate to your deposit. So that's one good feature. The second feature is the workforce is and the communities are used to exploration, so it's not like something that comes out of us from some other country. They know what we are doing. They understand it really well, and they are keen to help. So that's really important. And also, when you try to find a geologist, the Mexican geos are tier one, really nice. They know everything about our type of deposits. They study in Sonora, so this is what they know the best. So on that point is amazing. And then the fact that having all these mines around give us the infrastructure to act quickly. So from the moment we bought the project until now, we drilled a lot, we did mag, we did everything. And that's only possible because the infrastructure is really good. So you are 2 hours away from Alamos, which is a main city in Sonora. And between Alamos and us, you have multiple communities that can support you. And just not far away, 3 hours away, you have Navajoa, which is pretty much a mining town. So anything you need for exploration or mining is available in a day. So that being in a place like this, geologically is really important, but also operationally. So we couldn't be in a better place.
Okay. And I know we're skipping a few steps, but ultimately, would you think it's probably better to operate on the mine itself once you're ready to go into production one day, or do you think you'll go into a joint venture with one of these projects companies around you, or just sell the project to somebody, an operator around you? What do you think will ultimately be your goal here?
I would say all those paths
Okay.
are open in front of us.
Sure.
Right now we're really focused on hitting our targets and
Okay.
proving that the deposit is as big as we think. But I think a joint venture down the road, or at least some sort of technical committee with a major, that would be, I think the investors would really like that. We would like that because, it takes a lot of work to bring these things to eventual, build out of infrastructure and production. And doing it with a larger company that has done it many, many times before, that would probably be our preferred path. So yeah, let's see what unfolds here. But first and foremost, we need to, prove the deposit.
Joao, I'll let you comment on the new drill result that you're expected, or drill program that you're expected to commence, and tell us about the scale and the scope of this drilling program, and then I'll pass it back to Enrico to comment further.
Sure. So after our last discussion we had a couple of months ago, we have been really focusing on expanding at the Cerro Grande, and also de-risking our drilling. So we want to drill with the best possible data, so we miss the least number of holes possible. So for that, we did a lot of work. We are really proud of the team we have on the ground. We were able to complete around 1,700 soil samples in the new zone. Also, more than 2-3 kilometers in line mapping, more than 100 rock samples. We finish a LiDAR survey, we finish a magnetic survey. All of this to integrate into one single data set that tells us where to go, right? So armed with all this data, we were able to delineate around 8,000 meters drilling on a priority one type drilling. And the idea is an expansion of the Cerro Grande skarn, like you see now on the map, from 300 meters to around 2.5 kilometers. So this new magnetic survey we did, it's a drone-based magnetic survey, so it's state-of-the-art. Why we use drones and not helicopters? It's simple. First, it's way faster, it's way cheaper, and also you are flying closer to the ground. That's why we did a LiDAR survey first, and we were able to fly an altitude of around 25 meters from the ground. And the closest you are from the ground, the more you see, right? So now we can see with confidence with magnetics around 300, 350 meters. With an helicopter, you cannot get this type of survey because you are flying much higher. So that's why we went for a drone magnetic survey. I think this is quite cool information for anyone following the drone space. It's growing quite a lot, and it helps us a lot doing exploration. So after having the survey done, we integrated the data and we can see clearly the signature of the Cerro Grande skarn, which is a magnetite-rich skarn, and reacts really well to a magnetic survey. We can see it, and we could see it around the fold. So it's not just magnetic. So us as geologists, we integrate the magnetic map with the geological map. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Like you don't go through just magnetics. So by integrating everything and by having our teams on the ground verifying if you are actually in limestone or are you in a type of intrusion rock, we can map out what's the most prospective contact for an occurrence of a scan, right? So by doing this and by posing the magnetic survey on top, we found that the anomaly that is prospective just on the northern part can expand the scan from 300 meters to 2.5 kilometers. And that's the first step to build your drill program. So with that, we delineated around 7,000 meters on the Cerro Grande and then 1,000 meters on other targets outward of Cerro Grande. But this is the highest confidence since the project exists that the scan actually expands, and where does it expand? So now it's time to put the drill rigs in place and prove out that the expansion is real. And let's see how many tons we can take out from these 2.5 kilometers.
Mm-hmm. What will be the major milestones you would want investors to be aware of? Enrico, I'll pass it to you. In other words, if you had to finish 2026 strong and you had to look back and say, this was a successful year for us, what would those objectives be to mark this successful year?
It would be a significant expansion out of this historic 300-meter strike, where the discovery has been delineated. So there's 2.5 kilometers here of expansion potential. So adding, as Joao just mentioned, significant tonnage, intercepting a lot more mineralization in this area. That would be the number one objective, because we have a very high grade skarn that's been delineated up to this point, north of 1% copper, with very good silver and gold credits. So it's exceptional in grade. And now it's just a matter of, can it scale? Can it become much bigger? And if we're able to expand it, for even half of this 2.5 kilometer corridor, it would become a pretty, I would say, a world-class high-grade skarn deposit. So that's the number one objective. That's what we'd like to look back and see and say that, hey, we nailed the drill program. And by the way, we've been spending the last 4 months accumulating data to come to these drill targets. The other objectives are to make additional discoveries on this license. So as I'm sharing my screen, this is another target, never been drilled before. It's 3 kilometers away from the main skarn. This is also a copper target. Mm-hmm. And then there is another target. It's an epithermal silver, copper, gold target, which we're able to drill right on top of the old mine. It's never been drilled before. Yeah. So really the objective on these other targets is making brand new discoveries on this license, while simultaneously advancing and expanding the main Cerro Grande discovery, which is this core one here. So, yeah.
Okay. And if you go to the same slide deck, slide 17, this is an important slide deck for investors. Comparable companies, significant re-rating potential. Actually, you know what? Let me just share my screen because I have this up here. Can you just walk us through this slide and why this is significant?
Yeah, so this is just showing, once you get closer to anything above 25 million tons of high grade, you tend to see much higher valuations. And once you get to 50 million tons high grade, you get north of US $100 million in market cap. Our project is we have an internal exploration model. So it's not a 43-101 resource. That's something we're going to be working in probably by the end of 2027. Everything we do between now and then will be to put together a mineral resource estimate. But we know we're not too far from these numbers already. And so, what we're trying to show here is there is a lot of potential for growth in this company. The company is also structured in a way there is no warrants, there is no warrant overhang. Every private placement we've done has been free of any warrants. So we've really built a tight vehicle like that. If we're able to execute and again come back to the market with a world-class skarn, high-grade copper deposit, you should see a significant re-rating and a lot of value to be built for shareholders.
Say geology is boring, you're looking at rocks all day. From the many stories I've heard from the many geologists I've interviewed in my career, that is quite the opposite. Tell us one of your favorite stories working on the field, one of the most memorable days for you, anywhere out in the wild. Let's say it could be anything related to a discovery. It could be a interesting food you ate. It could be a interesting truck ride. What stood out to you? What's a core memory for you? I'll start with you, Joao.
I think Joao's got this.
Oh yeah, I am a lucky geologist. I've been on the business for 10 years and I was lucky enough to be part of many teams around the world. And I think we never did anything boring. We were not doing mining. Mining is boring, I think, because it's the same stuff every day. Exploration is a different stuff every day. Just for you to have a point, I would spend eight months in the field per year. So my luck is that my wife is also a geo, so she understands.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the best thing for me as a geologist first is all the buzz around. You are doing something new. You are discovering something every day. Any geological team I've been with, people from many nationalities, we always share the same passion. And geologist is a thing that you never retire from. I work with many geologists from being 20 years old to 80. And everybody has the same energy, and we want to go to the field every day. So that's the thing I like the most. But memorable moments for me, places like Sonora, places like Arizona, that you can actually sleep under the stars is really fascinating. And we are lucky enough that we can do that every day if we want. And for me, the best thing that happened with the Alita project was actually our ideas coming through and, drilling, seeing the copper coming out, going to the field and sharing with our geologists the feeling of having this on your hand, the core samples with 5% copper on it. And like when you see it, that you hit something big. So yeah, I would say that for all the work I've done, the Alita one has been the most rewarding until now. And sharing the road with Enrico has been great. He's a super big enthusiast in the geological world. Is almost like I would say is better than most of the bachelor geologists around already. And yeah, I think he shares the passion and is really critical. So yeah, really, really happy.
Okay. Enrico, any stories you want to share? Well,
I would just say the camaraderie, going out there,
sure.
And being in places that honestly, you otherwise wouldn't be, landscapes that you otherwise wouldn't see, meeting people you otherwise wouldn't meet. I think that for me, it's all about the nature and the people. So meeting the local people, they're humble, they have pride, they want to work. That's one of my favorite parts is being around new people and seeing different realities. But no, it's a beautiful thing. If you like to travel, then you'd be a good geologist, basically.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you. We'll follow the company. Where can we go to keep up to date with company news and developments?
You can go to www.algo-grande.com. You'll find the company website there. Yeah.
And to those of us watching right now, If you want to do more due diligence and research on the company yourself, it's Algo Grande, trading on the TSXV under the ticker ALGR. Thank you both, Joao and Enrico, and we'll speak again soon. Take care for now.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe.